My wife and I are employed at the same marketing firm. Lucy is a customer ambassador, although I am unsure of the precise nature of her duties, other than that she engages in sexual intercourse with customers. I am Mark, and I lead the IT team. Our lives were going well, we were employed, happy, and had completed renovating our dilapidated house. We also had 2 children, Emma, aged 13, and our son, aged 11. Daniel is an older gentleman who lives close to his family and has close friendships. He is over 30 and is a good match for me. She is very attractive, with a height of 1m75m, long blonde hair, and beautiful blue eyes. She claims her family lives in Sweden, and she has a Scandinavian appearance. She is intelligent, lively, and never seems to stand still. I am 7'5" centimeters tall with sandy hair. I engage in endurance sports such as cycling and running, which contribute to my slim physique and physical fitness. However, I do not exhibit ostentatious athleticism. I was astonished when I was invited to a long weekend on a private island owned by one of our firm's clients, Jack Edwards, our CEO. He informed me that he and his wife, Margaret, were traveling with several directors, and their partners. Lucy was also invited as she was the client's primary point of contact. It was initially implied that my role would be to perform a financial analysis, but Jack clarified that the client was affluent and could potentially become our firm's most significant client. We would depart on Friday morning and return on Monday via a private charter. Lucy was aware of the pertinent details. When I inquired about the upcoming excursion on my return journey, she informed me that she had been collaborating with the client for several months and was quite impressed. She also expressed enthusiasm for the complimentary weekend. However, when I questioned her further about the weekend's itinerary, she seemed to lack sufficient knowledge. Consequently, I sought further insight from Lucy regarding the client. She revealed that the client's name was William Fellows and that he was in his he appeared to be in his 40s and exuded self-confidence. She appeared confident and had inherited the family fortune. She described him as bossy and reserved, among other things. I considered this information and concluded that he seemed like an arrogant individual. However, I decided to reserve my observation until the weekend. 2 weeks later, on a Friday morning, we found ourselves on a private charter plane. I was impressed by the island's opulence. It seemed equipped to meet his every need. I don't know exactly what I expected, but it seemed huge, perhaps 5 miles long and a couple of miles wide. As we came into land, it appeared to be a 5-star resort with the main buildings located behind the white sandy beach that formed a perfect crescent. The Star Resort, with its principal edifices situated behind a crescent-shaped white sandy beach, was a sight to behold. Lucy was visibly elated, and the others were not far behind her. We were then escorted to our rooms and proceeded to lunch with our host on the veranda overlooking the bay. Despite initial reservations, William seemed like a reasonable individual. Lucy even downplayed his appearance, remarking that he resembled a younger version of George. He thanked us for coming and extended a warm welcome. We were informed that we were to make ourselves at home. We conversed with the other 3 couples from our firm and met a striking brunette named Charlotte, whom I presumed to be William's weekend companion. In addition to the wait staff, the only male not introduced to us appeared to be a security guard who lingered in the background. I was curious as to the nature of William's enemies and whether they were such that even on a remote island, he was compelled to seek protection. William greeted Lucy in a manner that suggested a long-standing familiarity. They appeared to be on friendly terms and seemed comfortable in each other's company. It was evident that they followed the majority of his instructions. This was to be expected, given that he was an exceptionally generous host and their most valuable client. We spent a pleasant afternoon snorkeling, kayaking, and relaxing in the bay. Frequently, drinks and food were provided. Later, we enjoyed an evening meal with all the members of the group. The atmosphere was amicable. We proceeded to engage in further conversation in smaller groups. Charlotte approached us and introduced herself. She was affable and conversed about her upbringing in England. I surmised that she hailed from a privileged background, yet she exuded sincerity. I pondered whether she might have been a model, or perhaps she was not compelled to pursue employment. To my astonishment, she exhibited a notable degree of flirtatiousness, even in the presence of Lucy. I managed to politely evade her advances, attributing this to her excessive friendliness. The setting was conducive to relaxation, and the idyllic location was ideal for a romantic night. Lucy was particularly affectionate, and our sexual intercourse was intense. She expressed her love for me on multiple occasions, which was the best night in a long time. Perhaps the Love Island concept is not entirely without merit. I was hoping for a repeat performance the next morning, but Lucy quickly showered and was ready for breakfast. I finally managed to drag myself out of bed and catch up with her while she was talking to Jack and William. I wondered if it was work, as both Jack and Lucy, her demeanor suggested a certain degree of stress. It was possible that William was attempting to initiate a romantic encounter over the weekend, potentially with the intention of pursuing a professional relationship. As I initiated the conversation, it quickly became apparent that it was not going to progress smoothly. After a brief interlude, we and the others proceeded to enjoy the remainder of the day by the pool. On Saturday, we proceeded to dine out. I observed that Lucy had made a conscious effort to present herself in a more polished manner. She looked particularly striking in a red satin evening dress and stilettos. Following our meal, William requested a few moments of my attention. I agreed and accompanied him into his office, where a security guard was waiting. William took a seat in a high-backed leather chair. He sat in a leather chair, and I sat on the sofa opposite Lucy, noting that she sat slightly away from me. After a long pause, William spoke. He proposed a personal matter, which he requested I mark. I answered, I understand, although I was completely stunned. William continued, I've had the pleasure of working with Lucy and getting to know her better over the past few months. It's been an absolute pleasure. We get on fantastically. I have developed a strong rapport with Lucy over the past few months. However, I was uncertain about the direction of his remarks. The term relationship caused me some concern. He proceeded in a relaxed manner, and as a result, I have a proposal. I would like to spend the remainder of the weekend with Lucy. I am willing to compensate for the time she would otherwise spend with you. To this end, I intend to transfer $100. I then transferred $100,000 into our joint account. I had intended this to be a joke, but I found myself unable to resist making it. It would appear that you are somewhat constrained financially, William. First, it is worth noting that Robert Redford offered more than £1 million for Demi Moore. It is therefore surprising that William did not receive a similar offer. William continued, stating that he was willing to negotiate the price to achieve his desired outcome. He also highlighted that Charlotte would be in a difficult situation and expressed his hope that the other party would agree to entertain her. I turned to Lucy, expecting her to smile, but she just looked worried. This suggests that William's proposal was not perceived as a joke. Mark, William invited me to join him, and I believe that we should consider this option. He urged me to consider the proposal. I was tempted to confront him, but the guard was already close by. I was astonished at his ability to maneuver so effectively. I did not even see him move. William continued, assuring me that my wife fully endorsed the plan. He claimed that there was no harm in it and that we would all enjoy ourselves while I would make a significant amount of money. I turned to Lucy, wondering if the price difference was explained by Demi Moore's refusal to accept the original offer. She was disconcerted by this remark but was sufficiently astute to refrain from comment. I attempted to think, but was compelled to focus on my respiration, which was becoming increasingly labored. I observed the guard. His demeanor had undergone a significant transformation. He appeared apprehensive and attentive to my movements, which was understandable given my desire to assault William in his attractive countenance. What is your name? Ex-military, he replied, judging by your appearance you often engage in this kind of activity. Shane, sir. I am unable to provide a commentary on this matter. In the event that I were to assault your superior, I believe you would be capable of killing me with your bare hands. Shane smiled, perhaps merely to dissuade you from doing so. I then addressed William, stating that it was fortunate you had brought him, as I would otherwise have severely assaulted you. William did not appear distressed. Let us proceed with caution. A great deal depends on this. Lucy then spoke, and Mark, I implore you to consider this. In just a couple of days, money will change everything. The offer of money was clearly planned and desired. It was evident that Charlotte had been offered money as well, in order to sweeten the deal. Who is she? Is she a prostitute? William replied, Charlotte is my personal friend. In addition to being wealthy, she is a high-class escort. She only takes on contracts that interest her. Something out of the ordinary. This suggests that both individuals are engaged in prostitution. Lucy expressed disapproval, yet there was no indication of a willingness to reconsider. William, you may place your financial resources at your own discretion. At this juncture, Lucy revealed her true character. This is my body, and I desire to engage in this activity. It is merely a physical act, and we will both be interested in exploring it with others. William and I have a romantic connection, but it is limited in scope. This does not alter our love for each other. I am confident that you and Charlotte. I was astonished by her words, which gradually became clear to me. The distinction between my wife and I is that I do not desire anyone else, and this is far more than you can imagine. This is treachery and collusion behind my back. I will never be able to trust you again. If you are willing to do it once, then why not do it again? Lucy responded promptly, you are overreacting. I informed you about this, so it is not a conspiracy or a secret. I am completely truthful. This will occur, and then I will return, becoming entirely yours if you love me. You will only permit me this one thing. Consider what we can do with the money, holidays with the children, and so on. Do not use our children as an excuse. We do not require money, and do not assume that I will take you back. Your honesty will only be effective if we agree on something together. The only person you agree with is yourself. This ostentatious display of wealth is merely an excuse you intend to pursue. I believe the motivation behind your actions is the prospect of financial gain, as well as your desire to pursue a relationship with Charles. Despite these considerations, I must reiterate that I do not concur with your decision. You have expressed a genuine desire to embark on a novel experience, and I acknowledge your attraction to William. However, I am concerned that this course of action may have adverse consequences for our relationship. I am not prepared to alter my stance, and you have presented this as a superior alternative. You have already made your choice, even though you have dressed up for it. There is no benefit in resisting, the consequences will not be favorable. What do you mean? If you fight this or go for divorce, you will lose everything, your home, your children, even your job. There is no need for this, so it would be better to accept it. Everything will be much easier. See you tomorrow, and remember that I love you. I was compelled to leave, as my ability to breathe was becoming increasingly challenging. If I remained, I would likely succumb to this distress. I rose from my seated position, feeling somewhat unsteady, and proceeded towards the door. I heard Lucy calling my name, but I continued walking as I traversed the hallway. Sharp Charlotte approached me and embraced me, assuring me that everything would be fine. I turned to her, inquiring, "Who are you?" She replied, "A consolation prize." She then walked away, her head held high. I continued walking and eventually exited the building and traversed approximately half of the yard. However, I did not feel well. I heard footsteps behind me and was disconcerted to see that it was Shane, not Lucy. "Shane, I urge you to reconsider your actions. I would like to oblige, but I must ensure that you do not engage in any reckless behavior. Do you have any suggestions? I am currently unable to formulate a plan of action. Mark, you appear to be in a compromised state. It would be prudent for you to assume a seated position. Adjure yourself against the wall, elevate your knees, and take slow, deep breaths." I felt weak and lacked the strength to argue. It seemed like an eternity, but it was probably only a few minutes before I calmed down. I noticed Shane sitting next to me. I am grateful for that. I am unsure what it was, but it may have been an anxiety or panic attack. You were quite pale, but now you look more pink. Shane, is there a way out of this situation? To extricate oneself from this predicament, Shane replied in a serious tone. It is not feasible to depart from this island today, as there are no available boats or aircraft. The pilot and his aircraft have been reassigned to another charter. One might be able to communicate with the relevant authorities by radio, but an adulterous spouse is not an emergency situation. It is encouraging to note that you believe your wife is unfaithful, however, she does not appear to grasp this reality. As a result, I am already beginning to question my own perceptions. What is the optimal course of action in this situation? I am unable to even physically assault him. Yes, I apologize for that. I would like to step aside, but I will never find another job again after this short period of time. Shane continued, listen, think about what you are going to do and come up with a plan. Whatever you need to do can wait until Monday. It's like in the army, form a plan, sit quietly, and don't tell them what you're going to do. The problem is that I have no idea what to do. They seem to have everything planned and I will have to endure the inconvenience of waiting until Monday to resume my journey while you assume responsibility for my safety. After a lengthy interval, Shane proposed an alternative option, a ship scheduled to arrive early Monday morning with cargo. You are free to accept this opportunity to circumvent the flight with the rest of the group. There is no legal recourse to prevent you from doing so. Furthermore, no individual, including myself, desires to be accused of kidnapping or imprisonment. I am even willing to accompany you on this venture. However, the appeal of this contract is diminishing. I am reluctant to remain in this situation. If I am on the wrong side, it is despite the considerable remuneration. I will endeavor to persevere until tomorrow. I propose that we embark on an excursion around the island tomorrow morning, which should serve to divert your attention from these circumstances. Furthermore, you should consider Charlotte, who is a remarkable individual. It would appear that you have few remaining obligations. You may choose to rest in one of the booths this evening, should you be reluctant to return. I am of the opinion that the room was unoccupied. I returned to ascertain whether she might have reconsidered her decision. However, she had not changed her mind. I then retired for the night, but I was unable to sleep. The following morning, I changed into my gym clothes and proceeded downstairs, hoping to avoid any further interaction and to go on my scheduled date with Shane. However, as soon as I entered the dining room, the atmosphere became noticeably tense. I quickly located something to eat and then I procured some fruit, and the sounds of conversations reached my ears. I overheard remarks indicating that everything was fine and that there was no cause for concern. She will surely return, I was told. At that moment, CFO John Cousins approached with his wife. He advised that we had all experienced similar situations and that there was no need to be concerned. He stated that it was not a personal issue and that he dated other wives but then moved on. He was very generous when he made this statement, and I observed his wife's neck turning red in response. Lucy and William then appeared. She appeared to be pleased with herself, and her demeanor could be described as radiant. However, this changed when she noticed me. Her smile faded and she released her hand from the man's grasp. She approached me with the intention of greeting me with a kiss or hug. I moved her away from me with my arm and I looked around. I thought, what an idiot. It was clear to me that everyone knew what would happen before the weekend even started. I was foolish to believe that I could avoid this outcome. I went out and Lucy spoke, saying, please stay. Mark, we can engage in further discourse with the group and potentially enjoy another fruitful day together. I surveyed the scene and observed that all eyes were fixed on me, some with anticipation and others with evident amusement at this turn of events. He has indeed provided for you financially and can maintain your presence, but before I take my leave, I feel compelled to share a matter of importance with the group. It has come to my attention that this weekend's events have been meticulously planned for quite some time, and you, the members of this group, have been privy to this information for some time as well. It is, therefore, only fair that you all be given an opportunity to hear what I have to say. The group members exchanged glances, visibly affected by the situation. Jack and Margaret, your presence this weekend was not necessary. I would never have come if you weren't here. I was unaware that you would be involved in such a reprehensible act. It seems you not only condone but also approve of his actions, akin to a fan club of sick voyeurs. I hope you found it amusing to keep me in the dark. As they began to move awkwardly, it became evident that this was not part of the plan. Their plans were a welcome surprise. I had assumed we were simply friends and that they were merely trying to make me feel at home. However, it became clear that their intention was to use me as a pawn in a larger scheme. The fact that they were willing to use leverage over my children is a disturbing indication of their true motives. I do not allow anyone to threaten my children. Lucy suddenly interjected, stating that my reaction was excessive. She attempted to justify the situation by claiming that it was merely sexual. However, this justification was not sufficient. Time, adventure, and it does not affect us. I informed you that I love you. I interrupted. We are now in the initial phase of the defense. What is it? Nothing special. I know you were planning how I would react as captain __. Therefore, let us examine your assumptions. Phase A is that we remain here and you help me adjust to the situation. You should attempt to normalize everything before we return home. This is combined with the fact that you and your friends have interpreted it as they have already initiated this discussion on your behalf. Undoubtedly, you believe that I should not exhibit excessive emotion, behave in an unruly manner, or act childishly. However, I am compelled to mature at the end of the day. It is merely my ego and pride. You are aware that this approach will not succeed, but it is an integral part of the softening process. Consequently, after the weekend, you will allow me to assume control. We will engage in frequent sexual intercourse and explore new experiences. Our relationship will benefit from your connection and become better than ever. It is likely that you have even discussed seducing me, as you have previously expressed feelings of loss. Lucy looked at William nervously. This comment seemed to hit the mark. Furthermore, we will have the money he offered for you. We will be able to use the money you earned from prostitution to take the children to Disneyland and meet Mickey. At these words, quite a few of them shuddered. The couple is still engaged in conflict. Faze has initiated sexual intercourse with Lucy, who had previously engaged in sexual intercourse with William. If I truly love Lucy, I should permit her to engage in sexual intercourse with Faze for 15 years. Lucy has been an exemplary wife, and this is merely one night for her. Undoubtedly, this may begin to erode my resolve, but what will I gain after 15 years of devotion to Lucy if I am treated disrespectfully? Lucy was aware that I would never agree to this plan, yet she has initiated sexual intercourse with Faze in a wholly disrespectful manner. Therefore, this plan is no longer viable. You are experiencing some concern. Perhaps it would be beneficial to allow me some time to recuperate. In approximately 1 to 2 weeks, you may find me in a state of emotional distress, seeking solace in an alcoholic establishment. At that point, you may request my forgiveness. This is Phase D. You are experiencing regret. You did not anticipate the extent of my suffering. Had you been aware of my feelings, you would not have proceeded. Express your emotions. Admit your shortcomings. I must acknowledge that you have an opportunity, but your actions have undermined that possibility. His demeanor was one of unabashed delight, as though he were congratulating himself. This confirmed to me that there was no remorse, only contempt and a desire to humiliate me. Phase D will not work for you, so a backup plan may be necessary. Phase D involves threats of financial exploitation, including the seizure of property and the use of children as leverage. You have already suggested that I might lose my employment. William will pay for the best legal representation I can afford. I will end my relationship with him. Life is characterized by sadness, poverty, and loneliness. One can even threaten to move in with the other parent and live happily ever after with the children. William raised his head so quickly that I almost laughed. It appears that the other parent does not truly desire to have a relationship with the children. Finally, Lucy found her voice. This is not a significant issue. She began, let's just relax and give ourselves time to think. This is Phase A, Lucy. We have already been through this. He stated emphatically, let us save ourselves the trouble of enduring this and move on to the final result. This is what I was contemplating last night, and I have reached the conclusion that everyone, including the children, would be better off if we divorced. This is a healthier option than remaining in an unhappy home. Ultimately, one cannot be happy when one is engaged in this kind of behavior, and I am certainly not happy. You may attempt to prevent me from seeing my children, but I will not be deterred. The children are aware that I am a responsible father, and they are old enough to comprehend this situation. It is unlikely that your family and friends will support you, particularly after they become aware of your actions. Money is not a significant concern for me, it has always been about you. Everyone was in shocked silence, eyes wide with disbelief. Have any of your children demonstrated any positive traits? Did I miss anything? I do not believe so. Finally, Jack, you can forfeit your job. I will see you in court for a forced dismissal case. My employment is contingent upon the client's reliance on my wife. It would appear that this is simply the reason for your departure. You could have heard a pin drop. Shane followed me as was his custom as we left. Shaney chuckled. I see that you have taken to heart the advice to keep the plan to yourself. I could not help but smile. It would seem that I have failed at this idea. Shane actually laughed as upon exiting the building, it became evident that remaining a civilian was the optimal decision. It was clear that success in the military was never a realistic possibility. Shane proceeded to gather his belongings and set off at a leisurely pace up the coast. After a mile, I began to experience difficulty keeping up with him, leading me to question the wisdom of this decision. I heard him shout something from up front about how physical torture is an effective method for distracting oneself from mental anguish. My burning muscles and lungs seemed to concur that the scenery was breathtaking, and Shane was in good company. He switched from asking about me to hilarious stories from his time in the British Army. We spent several hours circling the northern part of the island, climbing along the coast. We proceeded to a high point in the center. I was barely out of breath when Shane suggested we jog back since it was all downhill. I attempted to maintain pace with him, but I suspected he was intentionally slowing down to either support me or torment me, depending on one's perspective. We returned at noon, and I was experiencing respiratory distress and fatigue. I informed Shane that, up until that point, I had believed I was in optimal physical condition. He was not yet out of breath but was gracious enough to acknowledge that I was quite fit and that it would not be a significant issue for me. Given that he was a physical education instructor in the Army, I was somewhat reassured. I proceeded to my room. Lucy was not there, leading me to question whether my wife was receiving an additional remuneration. I proceeded to shower and, upon realizing my hunger, made my way to the dining room to find sustenance. However, I was once again disheartened to find William and Lucy there. Shane was also present, seemingly unperturbed, and I pondered how he managed to maintain such composure. He appeared radiant and fully attired in a suit. William then began to engage in conversation with his characteristic air of confidence. My esteemed colleague, I regret to inform you that we began this endeavor on the wrong foot. I extend my sincerest apologies for this misstep. I have not previously encountered such challenges in my personal relationships, and I am determined to avoid any actions that might jeopardize the stability of your marriage. However, the situation has already unfolded, and I must acknowledge that withdrawing my request to spend this evening with your wife and offering a more substantial compensation is the only viable option. William then presented me with a document. Upon opening it, I discovered a check for $250. I observed Lucy, who appeared to be in a state of distress, and I was compelled to respond. It is evident that you have been quite effective in achieving this level of remuneration. However, it is crucial to recognize that this is not the core issue at hand. We have collectively committed an egregious error, and we are striving to rectify it. William exemplified the epitome of grace and sincerity. I was concerned about how you reacted. I found this statement to be somewhat amusing. Could you elaborate on your idea of an ideal gentleman? Did he express gratitude after engaging in sexual intercourse with you? There is no need to jest. This is simply an unfortunate miscalculation on our part. We misjudged your reaction to the situation. It was a one-time occurrence. In a sense, it was a significant experience for both of us. We should be grateful to Lucy for making the sacrifice to offer you and your children a better life. However, it seems that there was a miscalculation involved. I expressed my thoughts on the plan, but it seems that you both proceeded regardless. You had the option to stop at any point, but you only did so after you had your share of pleasure. You calculated this little maneuver too. In response, I tore up the check I had just saved you from cashing, effectively rendering you a term that, in this context, signifies a person who has been unfaithful to their partner. However, I am skeptical that I can rectify this situation. Her tears began immediately. I turned to my colleague, William, and inquired about his motives. Was it a matter of control, or was it the thrill of having someone else's wife? It is evident that your actions reflect a lack of maturity and a tendency to engage in childish behavior. At 48 years of age, it is surprising to observe your inclination to engage in such activities as stealing toys. It would be more constructive for you to direct your attention towards more meaningful pursuits. William responded with a laugh. He informed me that he is the head of an international corporation and that he contributes millions of dollars to charity. This suggests that he has a significant amount of focus and attention directed towards his professional and philanthropic endeavors. The research I conducted last night indicates that you inherited this corporation, and under your management, it is shrinking in terms of charities attending gala dinners and fundraisers. Attending such events must be challenging for you. When was the last time you engaged in hands-on philanthropy? I question whether you possess the capacity to do so. You appear to be excessively self-absorbed. One might be forgiven for assuming that you are preoccupied with other matters, given the meticulous planning you have evidently put into this weekend. However, your evident enjoyment in humiliating others suggests otherwise. It is therefore necessary to question your motives. It is clear that your actions were not solely driven by a desire to interact with Lucy. Instead, it appears that you sought to engage with every board member's wife. This raises the question of why you did not pursue a relationship with Lucy directly. It would be beneficial for you to mature, form a genuine relationship with someone, utilize your wealth for constructive purposes, and cease acting as a complete __. For the first time I observed him falter in his speech and appear uncertain. I continued, Shane, you should remove that individual from my presence before I take the risk of doing so. I observed Shane conceal a slight smile before informing fellows that it was time for them to depart, citing concerns about his safety. After they left, I procured a snack and proceeded to the beach, attempting to avoid contact with the others. Just as I believed I was alone on the beach, I noticed Charlotte reclining in a hammock, reading. If she had been attractive previously, she was particularly alluring now. I approached her and apologized for the previous night's events. Before I could continue, she replied, "There is no need for this. I was certain that you would accept the offer if I had known. I would never have approached you. Your reaction is comprehensible and your speech at breakfast was exemplary. I concur entirely. When you departed, Lucy wept, and I have never observed William more disconcerted. I enjoyed every moment. I am sorry for speaking thus, given your circumstances." I replied, "Thank you. I am gratified that some clarity is emerging. I am weary of being told that this is absurd." You see, William is uncertain how to proceed. He had never been rejected before and was not accustomed to navigating moral dilemmas. Has he already extended an offer? Money, yes. Just before I came down, $250,000. I informed him that such an action was ill-advised, but he is accustomed to providing sufficient remuneration until he achieves his desired outcome. Consequently, he will bear the brunt of this decision, both professionally and personally. Charlotte was receptive and attentive as I discussed my marriage and children. She was evidently intelligent and highly educated. She expressed astonishment that Lucy would take such an action while seemingly in a happy marriage, suggesting that there may have been some underlying unhappiness or an open marriage arrangement between us. I contemplated this for a moment and concluded that it was simply an unexpected ambush. He appears to be the subject of her undivided attention. It is evident that he has the capacity to elicit such a response in a woman. While he is undoubtedly charming, it is important to exercise caution. We engaged in further discussion, and I experienced a slight improvement in my emotional state. It is evident that you hold a profound affection for her. Your reaction to the proposals and at breakfast must be distressing. Your heart. I shudder. I'm sorry that I participated in this. It is not your fault. I simply require the ability to survive one additional night, and then perhaps I will be able to escape. She smiled once more, and it was beginning to distract. Perhaps I can assist with this matter. Everyone was astonished when I arrived for dinner. Lucy no longer sat next to me. William's dinner was relatively uneventful, although I chose to disregard Lucy's attempts at small talk when she inquired if I wished to retire early. I responded with a pleasant smile and indicated that I had other plans. Lucy's demeanor became noticeably embarrassed, and this discomfort intensified when Charlotte approached and embraced me. We proceeded to exit the hall together, traversing the distance to the cabins on the beach. The initial intention was to simply depart together, thereby providing Lucy with a measure of her own medicine. However, Charlotte exuded a profound sense of comfort within my embrace, evincing a level of satisfaction that seemed to dissipate a portion of the disappointment accumulated over the previous 24 hours. I contemplated maintaining my moral standards and sense of right and wrong, but then I observed Lucy. It appeared that she desired me to exhibit greater flexibility. In my view, our marital vows have already been violated by Lucy. I had an exceptional evening with Charlotte. Her appeal extended beyond her physical beauty, she exuded a serene quality. Her movements were precise and timed with precision. She was a master of her craft, exceeding my expectations. I was surprised at my own lack of concern for Lucy and the painful memory of her with William. I was able to eliminate any hint of remorse. I had a good time. We took a boat taxi to the airport and then I proceeded to the usual flight home, collected the children, and made arrangements for their weekend. I provided a vague account of a disagreement between their mother and me, indicating that we would resolve the matter. I suggested a dinner meeting when Lucy arrived at the house, accompanied by our heavy suitcase and the children. She proceeded to ascend the stairs to prepare herself, uttering the words "Hi, Mom" in a cheerful tone. Lucy, in response, suggested that a meal might be a suitable option, provided that a few minutes were allocated for preparation. She expressed her preference for this alternative, stating that she would prefer not to engage in the activity that Lucy had previously mentioned. In a manner similar to what she had previously stated, Lucy indicated that she was uncertain about the amount of time she would have with them. Consequently, she expressed her desire for them to embark on the planned excursion without her. Subsequently, we proceeded to dinner, which proved to be an exhilarating experience. Afterwards, he kissed me goodnight, and I experienced a profound sense of elation. However, I was resolute in my determination not to engage in infidelity and informed him of my intentions. William discussed the nature of his relationships, which he characterized as open. I pondered whether Mark might be amenable to a similar arrangement when he extended the proposal. I reasoned that the financial compensation would justify such an arrangement. Jack expressed his support, and we commenced formulating plans for the weekend. The weekend commenced on an auspicious note. I had a remarkable experience. Time spent with Mark led me to consider abandoning the entire endeavor. William advised me to relax and that everything would be fine. Both he and Jack suggested that I allow Mark time to calm down. Mark's response was markedly different from what we anticipated. He appeared to be in poor health, which was the most unexpected outcome. I was compelled to pursue him, but William reassured me that everything would be fine. He requested that Charlo meet him, so when he did not return, leading me to believe that he was staying with her. I was relieved, as I had been waiting for months to spend time with William. As soon as he kissed me, I realized that I would succeed. He led me into his bedroom, and before I could remove my clothes, I was already excited with anticipation. William stood in front of me and undressed me as if I were a delicate trophy. Despite his age, I felt special. He was incredibly fit. I was not disappointed. Upon contact with his body or his manhood below the waist, I was repelled by William, who then proceeded to kiss my entire body in a slow and deliberate manner. He appeared to gauge my reaction and respond in a manner that seemed to be in sync with my desires and needs. My first climax came quickly, caused by his skillful caresses. When I came to my senses, he stood up and began to kiss me passionately. He was a skilled lover, and I was stunned by the sensations that washed over my body. He increased the pace and began to take me hard as the next climax approached. William followed me, and finally, we both relaxed in each other's arms. I woke up in the middle of the night confused, believing I was sleeping with Mark and shocked to find another man lying next to me. I felt guilty, wondering where Mark was and how he was feeling. I must have disturbed William because he woke up and kissed me, and my guilt was soon forgotten. William climbed on top of me again this morning. I was brushing my teeth when he came up behind me. He seemed insatiable. We moved back onto the bed, holding each other's hands. Before long, I pushed him onto his back and straddled him. I was delighted by the look of desire and ecstasy on his face. Once again, our final climax coincided with this. It was everything I had hoped for, and I was thrilled. I kissed William and thanked him for a wonderful night. It felt natural to hold his hand. As we proceeded down the stairs and into the dining room, his hand on my back, I was already anticipating another night. When I turned to look at Mark, however, everything fell apart. I had to swallow my panic when Mark exploded. It was clear that he had not slept with Charlotte. Even without this, I thought that he would leave, but I did not expect such anger. What scared me most was his cold rage. Mark was too logical in everything. He anticipated almost all of my I attempted to develop arguments when I brought them to the table, supported by William. However, they were quickly dismissed by Mark, who was able to refute them in a mere 5 minutes. Even I, in my own defense, found their logic to be weak and pathetic. I attempted to maintain my position, but it became evident that I was losing the argument after Mark's departure. I collapsed into a hysterical fit. William, for the first time, seemed uncertain. When I was able to collect myself, I sought out William, but he was not to be found. Jack and William then proposed an alternative solution to halt all proceedings by offering Mark more money. Later that day, I was astonished at the turn of events. William's presence had diminished significantly to the point where he appeared insignificant. Previously, his authority was such that I was inclined to believe him. However, at this juncture, it seemed to have been undermined to its limits. He had reassured me that we could have fun without jeopardizing my marriage. However, this plan ultimately proved ineffective, and I found myself in a state of heightened distress. I then experienced an irrational outburst, assuming that I would remain on the island for an extended period and enjoy myself. I was taken aback by Jack's composed yet harsh response. "Do not be so foolish, Lucy. If you wish to salvage your marriage, you must ask for forgiveness. Be sincere and earnest in your plea. He does not appear to be a man willing to reconsider his stance. I am at a loss to refute his assertions at breakfast." I was even more astonished when Jack informed William that they would never share the same fate. He proceeded to describe Mark as a decent individual and a person who did not merit such treatment. The situation that transpired was regrettable, and William should heed his own advice and reflect on the necessity of maturing. I was astonished to see Mark at the evening dinner. I attempted to converse with him, but he chose to ignore me when he departed with Charlotte. I was profoundly disheartened. I considered pursuing him, but what could I possibly say? I had essentially encouraged meaningless sexual intercourse and spent the majority of the trip justifying my actions. I felt anger, betrayal, and a sense of injustice. Then, I recalled my own past actions with Mark. However, what intensified my feelings was that I had planned and initiated these encounters. It was a premeditated and public act. I believe I am entitled to it, at least it might facilitate our continued union. The flight back to the island without Mark made me realize how much trouble my marriage was in because he had managed to leave the island before us. I did not engage in meaningful dialogue with him after that incident. I began to grasp the implications of my actions, and waves of guilt washed over me. I reminded myself about money. Who in their right mind would refuse such an amount? My constant tears turned into full. I was overcome with sobs that bordered on hysteria, which I was unable to control. Jack and Margaret expressed increasing concern for my well-being. Upon my return, Mark was present, yet he declined my invitation to share a meal with me and the children. I was able to maintain my composure until their departure, at which point I became overwhelmed with emotion. Being excluded from the meal appeared to be a harbinger of future difficulties in my relationship with Mark. When I regained my senses, I frantically sought guidance on how to respond when Mark returned. However, I was unable to formulate a coherent plan due to my emotional state and the fact that I was unsure of how to proceed. I sought counsel from my friends. Upon returning home, the children promptly retired to their respective rooms, engrossed in video games and mobile devices. I stood and observed Lucy in the kitchen. She appeared wholly unfamiliar to me. She uttered a barely audible, "Can we converse in earnest?" I acknowledged that we should resolve this matter at some point, but that it might be preferable to avoid prolonging the inevitable. I expressed remorse to Mark, reiterating my commitment to him and to being as devoted as I had been previously. The weekend in question, I engaged in the act for financial remuneration. It has the potential to be transformative for our family unit. I did it for us, you did it for yourself. Our circumstances were satisfactory, and financial resources were not a constraint. You were eager to engage in sexual intercourse with him. You must have enjoyed a lavish dinner and sexual intercourse. Overall, everyone had a positive experience. You are overreacting. This incident should not be a cause for concern. It is important to move on from this phase. Lucy, this was not casual sexual intercourse. It was a deliberate act of infidelity. It was an act of arrogance. The aforementioned traits are perceived as selfish, and as a result, a strong negative sentiment is directed towards the individual in question. It is asserted that a similar action was taken towards another individual, however, this is refuted. The motivation behind the action was driven by a desire for retribution, as it seemed that the impact of the initial action was not fully understood. It is further stated that the incident in question would not have occurred had there been a more supportive and understanding spouse. It is hoped that the experience will result in significant emotional distress, providing a deeper understanding of the feelings involved. It is clarified that the action was not premeditated and that the knowledge of others was not utilized. Furthermore, I was compelled to portray myself as an utter fool. In this context, I inquire as to the duration of your clandestine scheme and whether this was your inaugural encounter with him. Her eyes widened at this, but then she seemed to realize that this was a sincere and reasonable question. It was the inaugural occasion on which we had dinner, and I was aware that he held positive sentiments towards me. I believe that Jack and Margaret were gauging my interest. The four of us were having dinner, and for the first time in my marriage, I found myself aroused by another man. His confidence was intoxicating. I was aware that it was wrong and attempted to resist, but I was unable to prevent myself from having an affair. William then suggested opening up our relationship and asking you about it. We discussed this briefly one evening, but it was evident that you would not agree. He then proposed this idea, and I believed that the money would make it worthwhile for you. Was it worth it? As the trip drew nearer, he proposed inviting Charlotte to guarantee your acquiescence. I was initially reluctant to this suggestion, but by that point, I was eager for the trip to commence. I believed that even if you were not entirely supportive of this plan, we would be able to recover. However, at breakfast, you effectively dismantled all these ideas, and I began to recognize the implications of my actions. Was it worth it? Lucy exhaled, "No, of course not." I was so swept up. He proceeded to elucidate his perspective, asserting that he had never intended to cause her pain. He then transitioned to phase D, which pertains to unintentional pain. It was evident from her animated demeanor during breakfast that she was deriving pleasure from the situation. She then offered an apology, stating, "I'm sorry, but the honest answer is yes. I enjoyed it." He was skilled, and while the experience was not more intense or superior, it was novel and exhilarating. He is highly experienced and adept, but this was the sole instance. I implore you not to abandon us and disrupt our familial bond over a single incident. In a subsequent incident, I found myself smiling. Riley, it is interesting to note that this is precisely how I would describe your actions. They have resulted in the destruction of our family. It is now incumbent upon you to act, not upon me. You are correct in your assessment of the situation. I am at fault. I offer you my sincerest apologies. I love you with all my heart, or at least I did. You have given part of your heart to him, and even if you claim that you did not give him your love, your actions have demonstrated that your love was not enough to keep me faithful. How can I trust you again? I was so trusting because it never occurred to me that you were capable of what you did. I now realize that I don't really know you. I am still in a state of shock and disbelief, and I am unable to look at you or even pretend that this didn't happen. Lucy recoiled in shock. You cannot say that you love me. I know that I never thought that I could lose you. I concede that your actions were motivated by self-interest and a disregard for my feelings and the children's. However, it is evident that your actions were driven by more than just love. I attempted to compose myself and disengage from the futile pursuit of victory in this argument. After a considerable interval, I resumed my discourse with Lucy. Even if we were to remain together and simply move on from this incident, as you have suggested, it is inevitable that we will never be the same. You have irreparably damaged the trust and bond of care that once existed between us. You must acknowledge the gravity of your actions. We were a couple who cared deeply for each other and the children. We did not allow anyone else to suffer as a result of our actions. I had not anticipated such a response from you. Could you please stop hurting me, Mark? I love you. I made a significant error in judgment, and I am prepared to do anything to rectify it. This does not entail a divorce merely to satisfy your demands. You have inflicted severe emotional distress and intimidation upon me. You do not treat someone you truly care about in such a manner. Lucy was silent, taken aback, uncertain of how to respond. We must discuss the issue of the children. It is my opinion that children are better off in separated families than in those that are dysfunctional. Therefore, the best option is divorce. I agree that you will win custody, but do not attempt to prevent me from seeing them. This will be for the best. For you too, they are listening to me. You are not particularly adept at establishing boundaries. I regarded the irony of that remark, noting that they are already testing you. It will be more beneficial for you and for them if I remain in their lives. Lucy gave a shrug that was both dismissive and serious. From the perspective of maintaining contact with our children, it is imperative that I am not alienated. I am not a malevolent individual, I treat them with care and affection. You have yet to witness the full extent of my displeasure. I am prepared to engage in a prolonged and costly legal battle to protect our relationship. She nodded in agreement. I would never resort to such measures. He is an excellent father, and they require his attention. They will want him to continue taking them with him on trips and practicing with them in all sports. I turned and looked at her, surprised by the first comment in which I felt that she was not attempting to manipulate me or justify her actions. Be cautious, Lucy. You are exhibiting signs of phase D. Despite your awareness of my identity, you have initiated this conflict. I can only conclude that your underlying motive is to cause our separation. God never, Lucy said urgently. There is no justification for this behavior. I became self-centered, convinced that I could obtain a more advantageous situation. I was under the impression that I could hold you back from pursuing another relationship. Why didn't you intervene that evening and simply leave? I was unable to breathe and had to leave. It seemed that the fact that you wanted to pursue another romantic interest by any means necessary meant that I had already lost you. This conversation was the final straw. Perhaps it was all over when you first started planning your escape. You spent weeks talking to him and preparing to leave. Not forcing you to stop makes it easier to end everything. There is no turning back, and that was the beginning of the end. The marriage was irreparably damaged in less than 4 days. We divorced, fortunately without any need for counseling. It seems that Lucy was reluctant to justify her actions. It is regrettable that I was hoping someone qualified could demonstrate the inaccuracy of her assertions. She did, however, fulfill one promise, and in the end, we spent approximately equal amounts of time with the children. She even admitted to them that everything was her fault without going into details. They were old enough to understand and often decided for themselves where to stay. They were at that age when parents became famous taxi drivers. Furthermore, I consider myself to be biased, but I believe that the children are admirable and demonstrated remarkable resilience in the wake of the divorce. While Lucy had the option of retaining the family home until the children reached an appropriate age, I believed that it would be beneficial for them to attend the same school. Fortunately, this decision proved to be advantageous, as by the time the children reached college age, real estate prices had significantly increased. Consequently, Lucy was compelled to purchase my share, which proved to be one of the most lucrative investments of my life. I would like to inquire as to how she was able to afford this purchase. We retained $250. We divided the sum of $000 in the divorce settlement. Similarly to my decision regarding Charlotte, I was unable to maintain the moral high ground. I am a pragmatic individual, and I considered the financial implications of my actions. In my opinion, the cost of the divorce was relatively minor compared to the financial and emotional investment in the marriage and the subsequent dissolution. I resigned from my position, received a severance package to avoid the potential embarrassment of an employment tribunal, and began my own web design business. Lucy attempted to reconcile our relationship, but I was uninterested in pursuing it further. Consequently, I questioned the wisdom of ending the relationship. The situation was complex and resulted in no clear victors. However, the initial threats and consequences did not materialize. I was not going to forget, ignore, or forgive the incident. It is crucial to examine oneself in the mirror and be satisfied with the reflection. Subscribe to our channel to avoid infidelity and other forms of infidelity. Continue listening to the next story, which is more impactful than the previous one. If you are under 18, do not listen to the next story.